Ready to go? Good evening, everyone. I will call the meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. Thank you for your patience. We are running a little late. We have a special guest tonight, and I want to introduce Janice Drake, who's the Merit Badge Coordinator for Troop 76, and we have the gentleman from Troop 76 here with us this evening. So we'd ask that you come up and stand up here and please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. So come on up. You could just stand here and turn so that everyone can see you. That'd be great. Okay.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Welcome. We'll begin this evening, as we do every meeting, with the public audience. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board? Yes.
Joan Code 26 Richmond Drive. At the last meeting, I reported my thorough investigation into the alleged illegal use of 33 Canal Street as a medical building and a two-family home in an R15 zone where State Representative John Hampton resides. First Selectman Mary Glassman forwarded my comments to Town Attorney DiCrescenzo for an opinion, and as of this date, there has been no response. It appears from town records that State Representative John Hampton's last tax payment was for a Chevy Lumina for $63.26 in 2011. State Representative John Hampton has been using the Simsbury Library as an office and has used the copy machine on a number of occasions without any payment for his copies. Is State Representative John Hampton exempt from payment for these services? It appears that Dave Richmond, owner of 730 Hop Meadow Street, continues to be non-compliant with the Building and Zoning Department. He continues to be fined $150 a day from November 21st for the illegal wheelchair ramp in front of the building. When will this issue be resolved? I recently reported that many organizations have requested gathering permits for town review. This has placed an undue burden on staff. All gathering permit applications are reviewed by the town at no cost to the applicant. The Building Department and Planning Department receive payments for their services in permit applications and plan review. Why can't a charge for services be applied to applications for gathering permits? Another fee for service should be applications for signs and banners along with the permit applications. Simsbury taxpayers should not be expected to subsidize organizations doing business with the town. It's time to pay for play. I am very concerned that the state has approved a medical marijuana factory in close proximity to an explosive factory. Dyno Nobel manufactures shock tubes with PETN for blasting, an explosive allegedly used by terrorists, virtually next door to the medical marijuana facility. The PETN facility is in close proximity to a new development of high-end rental units and upscale housing. In the past, there was an explosion from the PETN factory. Has Consumer Protection been told in the application process that the medical marijuana facility abuts the manufacturing facility of PETN? Have the residents of this upscale housing community been told that they are living near an explosive facility and a marijuana factory? In a recent Hartford Courant article, it states, quote, a spokesperson for the company that will operate the facility, Curaleaf LLC, and I quote, said the company was aware of the legal issues faced by Daniel Carpenter, a Simsbury resident and chairman of Gristmill Partners, which owns the building at 100 Gristmill Road. Carpenter was sentenced last month by a federal judge in Massachusetts to 3 years in prison and 3 years supervised release after he was convicted by a jury in 2008 of 19 counts of mail fraud and wire fraud, according to the Massachusetts U.S. Attorney's Office, end quote. It is alleged that in the application process for this facility by Curaleaf, Carpenter must vacate the facility prior to final approval. In a rush to be the first medical marijuana facility in the state, I am concerned that much of the review process has been fast-tracked with little or no oversight, financially benefiting the few at the expense of others. All marijuana facilities are in direct conflict with federal law that presently considers marijuana a Schedule I narcotic and punishable by imprisonment. As long as this conflict remains, everyone in the marijuana business is breaking the law. Why did Simsbury subject its residents to this facility where an underground element could infiltrate the business of marijuana? At the town's direction, the auditing firm of Bloom Shapiro was paid $14,000 to strengthen controls of student activity accounts, Simsbury Farms cash procedures, Performing Arts Center cash procedures, and building department management to protect the town with cash chain of control and accountability. They were not requested to audit the cash in each account, just the controls placed on the cash in the town transaction. Bloom Shapiro submitted a 36-page report with their recommendations. It was noted that at the golf course, there are multiple full-time and seasonal employees working the register each day. On slow days, a starter is not present to receive the receipt at the first tee to make sure the golfer paid for play. It appears that with many people collecting cash and lack of controls, money can be missing or not accounted for. According to the report, the facility's sales report details the number and type of each transaction, including cart fees, range fees, and complimentary golfers, discount golfers, and season pass golfers, end quote. Why does the golf course have complimentary golfers? How many golfers are permitted to play without paying? There were several recommendations for changes to tighten control. Bloom Shapiro's review of the performing arts brought out the extreme lack of controls in all areas of money management. It states, BSC Bloom Shapiro notes that the appropriate invoice that may document the number of tickets printed for an event could not be located, end quote. How can the performing arts reconcile their statements when they have no controls? Now that the Performing Arts is a private nonprofit organization, the Attorney General's office will be overseeing their tax returns for compliance. According to the Comprehensive Audit Report, page 38, deposits, it states, and I quote, deposit custodial credit risk. Custodial credit risk is the risk that in the event of a bank failure, the town's deposit will not be returned. The town does not have a deposit policy for custodial credit risk, end quote. The total amount subject to custodial credit risk is $15,391,758. When will the town address this issue? According to town records, the Simsbury Farms Special Revenue Fund shows a deficit of $234,950. It appears that this fund will continue to run deficits. The taxpayers will cover the cost since the money will be coming out of the general fund. Since the Simsbury Farms Revenue Fund continues to run a deficit, should taxpayers pay the shortfall year after year? It was also stated that money set aside for unnegotiated salaries was not placed in the 2014 budget, another withdrawal from the general fund. The Finance Board has decided to take $900,000 out of the general fund to cover expenditures that were omitted in the 2014 budget. I am concerned that accountability from our administrative staff is lacking, causing the taxpayers to pay for the shortfall. The general fund should not be used as First Selectman Mary Glassman's piggy bank with offline payments. It is time that the taxpayers demand professional management. At the last meeting, a resident was concerned about the activity underway at Meadowwood site on Hoskins Road. There are huge piles of contaminated soil remaining on site for months. The roads are sandy from truck activity, and rocks on the road are transferred from the trucks. Will the contaminated soil deposits once again contaminate the soil? Is this the best practice for removing contaminated soil? And thank you for listening. I'll give you these two pictures so you can review them. Thank you for listening, and I'm putting all my information on Simsbury, www.simsbury.com, and Simsbury Patch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Robert Callison, Simsbury. And I'd just like to make a comment to the Boy Scouts. Continue what you're doing. We're all very proud of you. You're welcome. Mainly, I'm going to devote all my time to the marijuana in town and what's going on here. But before I do that, I noticed something this evening, and I'd like to make a comment with your permission, Madam First Selectman. You know, I witnessed the Republicans. What a poor showing tonight. When two Republicans, one leader and one newcomer, get into a little spat about policy and motion that's going to be put forth, it seems to me the Republican ought to respect the person that's putting forth the motion and stop trying to engage them. If you want to engage them and do something and do some good, I think your sight should be set on the Democratic administration. And I'm just going to leave you with one thought that Linda Schofield said in a debate when I was running for representative from the 16th district, and I was debating her. And it was, Representative Schofield said, there's no difference between the Republican and Democratic Party, so vote for me, the Democrat. And if you're going to carry on like there's no agreement or disagreement with the Democrats, then you might as well just as well let the Democrats take control, because Ms. Schofield is right. There's no difference between either one of us. Now, having said that, as you're all aware, I'm very concerned about what's going on over here with the Eno property and the Eno property that's been sold to Mr. Carpenter, and Mr. Carpenter appearing before the zoning board. And Mr. Carpenter, in my opinion, committed fraud. He was a convicted federal felon. He went before that board and he committed fraud. He gave his recommendation. He told no one on that board, or no one on that board bothered to inquire whether or not he was under indictment or he was convicted and going to prison. The man was going to prison. He's in prison now, I think. And here we are. We have zoning officials. Namely, we have the commissioner, a Republican, who's the chairman of that commission. His name is Robert Pomeroy. He allows this thing to go through. Madam First Selectman, I read an article that's been substantiated in the Hartford Courant, and in the Courant, I see Pat Ryan. Who is Pat Ryan? I know who Dave Ryan is. Dave Ryan is on the zoning commission. Who is Pat Ryan? Pat Ryan was the spokesman for these marijuana people. Who is Pat Ryan? The next thing is that everybody says, well, nobody appeared at the hearing. Nobody knew there was a hearing. Now, just more or less to show you the difference in good government, this is in today's Hartford Courant, and it's Monday the 24th. And under West Hartford, it's town schedules marijuana medical hearing. And this is being scheduled by an adversary of yours, Mr. Skefka, the mayor of West Hartford. And he and the council people from West Hartford come out and they say, we're notifying all the people to come out and attend the hearing. And the zoning board and Mr. Hiram Peck, the town official that allowed this travesty to happen, he allows it to go on. And nobody, and you mean to tell me not one of yous knew about it? You have a town official holding the zoning board. He's going to come up and recommend the marijuana operation, and nobody knows about it? And nobody from the Board of Selectmen goes and tries to find out what's going on? I'm happy that we have youngsters like these Boy Scouts, because I know how they know how to say no. But how about the ones that aren't? How about the people that we voted? The minister came in from Bristol, and you said to him he's going to help all these people that become addicted. And what do? And this is the example we're showing that our people from the zoning board and our town officials are showing. And, you know, it's no secret. Marijuana is an entry drug for hard drugs. Marijuana is listed in the Federal Journal along with heroin, cocaine, and the other addictive drugs. You know, we're dealing with dynamite here. And now the most important thing, in my opinion, and I'm appealing to all the citizens, fraud was committed in this town. I want something done by Madam First Selectwoman. I want you to have an investigation or have a hearing and find out what they intend to do up there, just like they're doing in West Hartford. And I know that the people that put this thing together were very clever, and they skirted the liquor laws, and this is what we're dealing with. And I think it's your obligation, and every member on this board's obligation, to find out for your constituents what they intend to do over there. It's in total secrecy. Nobody knows what's going on. It's on private property, and I'm certain if you go over there, they're going to tell you to get out of there. And I'm just appealing to every member here, we got to stop this thing. And it's against the federal law.
Thank you, Mr. Couchman.
And I'm going to close with an argument. And I'm going to stretch a little. If slavery is against the law, if the 14th Amendment is against the federal law, then marijuana, which is a drug and is against the federal law, is against the law. We don't have slavery, and we shouldn't have drugs, because the federal law states very clearly it's against the law to possess it, to take any part in it, to conspire to perform it, and this has all been done by the town, Ensign, Bigford, and all of them. And it has to, and I know I'm not going to go there, but what I'm saying is I think you have to have an investigation and find out what's going on. And in the event you have to recluse yourself, but let's have an investigation. Let's find out what's going on in that building over there.
Thank you, Mr. Couchman. Anyone else? Yes.
Trifecta. Steuben Arzik, 119 East Weetag Street. I'm going to get a lot of phone calls about the Meadowwood project and concerns about possible contaminated land that's sitting there. When I was on the Planning Commission, one of the biggest things, and the only reason that I even voted for this, was because they were going to deal with the contamination correctly and it wasn't going to affect people. And we were assured and reassured and assured and reassured that it was going to be watched for properly, that it was going to be, there was going to be proper oversight. Then I hear there's not proper oversight, then I hear there isn't. I'm not even on the Planning Commission anymore, and I'm getting phone calls because I'm always perceived as the residents' representative. So somebody else needs to be the residents' representative and decide that they're going to look into this, because first of all, if I had a small child, I would never move into one of those houses, because if you dig a sandbox, there could be contamination in there. Do you want your kids to take a handful of chloridane and put it in their mouth? I wouldn't. So we were, I will say, strung up by the finance board, because they did not want us to cause any more, have any more legal fees. And the problem with that is, when the finance board gets involved in land use, is they don't understand all the ramifications. So I know people over there who are concerned about it as well. And there were specific rules about not working on this when the school was in, not having the dirt, because the minute it puffs into the air, all these carcinogens are in the air. So now I find that we vote for something in good faith and that this is going on. So I don't know if DEEP needs to get involved. I'm not sure what needs to get involved, but something needs to be investigated, because this should not be happening. And it's dangerous for the people who are living there now, and it's dangerous for the people who are going to be moving in there. And there should be a big skull and crossbones on everybody's title for their house, so they're well aware that they're moving into a place that had carcinogens on the property, and may still have them by the way that this thing was handled. So I really think it needs to be investigated, because I think this is a danger. This is hugely, hugely risky for the people who are moving in, and it's dangerous for the people who live around the area. The second thing I wanted to talk about is I was the only member of the public, big shock, to go to the Economic Development Task Force. So, and I'm going to continue to go as a member of the public, even if I am the only one there, because I just want to make sure that we're doing land use the right way. I am concerned because I just want to make sure that we're not going to go down the same road we went down before, and that we're not going to be pronouncing a big shopping center, and we're really going to come up with a plan. And two of the members, who are actually marketing and advertising people like myself, brought up the fact that we really need to know what we want to be before we put the pieces together, and that we really make sure that we're bringing in the right types of development. So I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen. I hope we're not going to be, one of the things that when we had the Metro for Hartford Alliance do a presentation at the high school years ago, the one thing that Sandra said when she was presenting was, do not bring something to the town that the taxpayers do not want. It is a waste of time for both the residents and for the applicant. It has been very clear that we have done that in the past, not just with the 5-year big box battle that turned with a lot of people getting a lot of issues from it, still now to this day. I'm still getting punished. So the bottom line is that I really think, I heard a lot of people saying, oh, all the developers like Hiram. Well, you know what? Why don't you talk to a couple of residents, because they don't have the same opinion. And everybody should have the same opinion about the town planner. He shouldn't just be caving out everything, for the developers. I had a situation across the street from me that's still a problem, because there was stuff that was not dealt with. And so I think that the reality of the situation is the guy that's in the middle is the guy that you want, not the guy who rolls over for the developers. And so, as I said, I'm trying to convince my neighbor, who's a town planner, to put together a list of, she's just been shocked since she moved in on how things have been happening. And I think, being a town planner, I think she's just stunned by the way that we handle things here. So I've been trying to convince her to write a list for you guys of all the things that she's seen that are being done improperly. And, perhaps we can jump on that. But it's kind of time that we really start doing things right. And as I said at the last meeting, I would like to be home tonight watching TV. I don't want to keep coming here, but I am going to keep coming here until we start doing things right. So even if I have to come years from now with a cane in my hand and shake it at you guys, I'm going to do it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. So that completes the public audience portion. That's the opportunity for the public to come and speak on any issues that they choose. So I just want to state for the record that we did have a number of residents that did come and express concern on some environmental issues at the Meadowood project, and I think that was mentioned earlier in public audience. I did refer that to the Planning Commission for a public hearing, so there will be a public hearing on that item tomorrow night, right here in the main meeting room. So if anyone's interested in attending, that meeting that will be held tomorrow. Our next item tonight is a presentation on autism awareness. I want to welcome Shannon Nall, who's an advocate and a former selectman and representing our interests, and also Lisa Hebner to read a proclamation for autism awareness. Why don't you guys
come on up? Do you want to help me read? Anyone want to help?
Sure.
Jack? You want to help me?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I would love to help.
Lisa needs a lot of help.
Okay, so Jack, why don't you and I take turns? Do you want to try reading too, or no? Sure. Okay, so we'll all take turns. I'll start off, and then I'll pass it to you, and we'll go around. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Proclamation, Autism Awareness. Whereas autism, the fastest growing development disability in the United States, affecting more than 3 million people, is an urgent public health crisis that demands a national response, and
whereas autism is the result of a neurological disorder that affects the normal function of the human brain and can affect anyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, or socioeconomic background, and
He doesn't want to
I just started.
you could do the whereas. You want to do the whereas?
Whereas
Symptoms and characteristics of autism may present themselves in a variety of combinations and can result in significant lifelong impairment of an individual's ability to learn, develop healthy interactive behaviors, and understand verbal as well as nonverbal communications.
Good. All right.
Right on cue.
Excellent. We got this down. The effort to address autism continues. Doctors, therapists, and educators can help persons with autism overcome or adjust its challenges and provide early, accurate diagnosis and the resulting appropriate education, intervention, and therapy that are vital to the future growth and development. And
whereas
ensuring the persons living with autism have access to a lifelong care and services needed to pursue the full measurement of personal happiness and achieve their greatest potential. And
whereas
The town of Simsbury is honored to take part in the annual observance of Autism Awareness Month and World Autism Awareness Day in the hope that it will lead to a better understanding of this disorder. And
therefore,
I, Mary A. Glassman, First Selectman, do hereby proclaim April 2014 as Autism Awareness Month and April 2nd, 2014 as World Autism Awareness Day in Simsbury to raise public awareness of autism and the myriad of issues surrounding autism, as well as to increase knowledge of the programs that have been and are being developed to support individuals with autism and their families.
in witness thereof, I have placed my seal on the Great Seal of the town of Simsbury.
Hey, well done. Very well done.
Thank you. That someday, when I go to Washington, D.C. to visit my cousins, I, Jack Knoll, will ask my Aunt Lisa and Uncle Mike to drive me to PBS headquarters and appear on television.
There you go.
Jack, the pen.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would like to just acknowledge some of our families in town who are living with autism who joined us tonight for the proclamation. I know how hard it is to get out, so I appreciate you guys tonight.
It's great to have you.
Good job, guys.
As always, to the board for your ongoing
Thank you.
support. Look forward to seeing you on April 2nd.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Good job, guys.
Nice job, guys.
We'll move now to our next item, First Selectmen's report. I have a brief report. If I can find it. There it is, right here. This is good news. We are inviting our residents to provide input and participate in the Town of Simsbury Police Department's reaccreditation process. If you recall, in 2011, the Town of Simsbury was accredited by the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, called CALEA, which recognizes police departments for excellence in operations. The honor is awarded to just a small number of police departments throughout Connecticut, so it is truly an honor. Our department is now seeking reaccreditation by CALEA this year, and as part of that process, a team of assessors from CALEA will be in Simsbury from March 30th through April 2nd to examine all aspects of the department's operations and support services. As part of that evaluation, the public is invited to participate, to provide feedback, and to share their assessment of our department. We will have a public information session on Monday, March 31st at 4 o'clock, right here in the main meeting room. You can also reach the assessors by telephone on March 31st from 1 to 3 p.m. at 860-658-3158, or you can write to CALEA at 13575 Heathcote Boulevard, Suite 320, Gainesville, Virginia. We'll have all this information on our website. I'd like to thank the chief and the department for first undertaking this initiative and meeting the very high standards that departments must meet in receiving this award. It's important that our residents understand the importance of this process and that they participate in providing us feedback and input on how our department is operated. So I encourage you to participate. I also want to announce the Whitewater Triple Crown kayaking competition will be held on the Farmington River again this year, April 12th and 13th. It will be between Terriffill and East Granby. It's a regular event here in Simsbury. It begins both days on the 12th and 13th at 9 a.m. If you haven't participated or attended in the past, you really are in for a treat. We have worked with the Terriffill Village Association to host the event for a number of years, and Terriffill Park is the organization area for the event. The races include 3 major whitewater disciplines of wild whitewater racing, slalom, and freestyle. They are some of the most exciting athletic competitors that in the sporting area, and there's no charge to come to the event. There's a shuttle service from Einhorst Boulevard provided by Mitchell Auto Group, so it's easy to get back and forth to the event. The competition this year includes both men and women's competitions and junior classes, as well as classes for kayaking and 1 and 2 paddler canoes. Both the top 10 men and top 10 women from Saturday move on to the Sunday finals, and there is a championship award. I would like to particularly thank Frank Haviland and the Terriffill Village Association for working so hard to put on this annual event. It's really a remarkable event, so please mark your calendar. We'll now move to the action items of our board meeting. This is the part of our agenda where the Board of Selectmen needs to take action to conduct the town's business. Our first item this evening is a approval of the tax refunds. These are items that have been reviewed by our tax collector and have resulted in an overpayment of taxes, and therefore they need to be refunded, and only the Board of Selectmen can vote to refund taxes. So I'd ask the board to approve a total of $2,989.38 in the tax refunds.
I'll move that.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion and presentation of the Board of Ed capital plan. As is required by town charter, it is the job of the Board of Selectmen to receive and present a capital improvement plan to the taxpayers of Simsbury. As is required by charter, the Board of Selectmen must consider and forward a capital improvement plan recommendation to the Board of Finance by March 31st. It is only March 24th, so we are well ahead of our deadline. We have had a number of budget workshops previous to tonight's meeting where we reviewed the capital programs, and as part of the presentation, the Board of Ed is also required by state statute and charter to come to the Board of Selectmen. We do have some handouts tonight which are a little different from what the board's received. The first is the Town of Simsbury Capital Improvement Program. These are the same items that are on our website and that we have had previously reviewed. We also have the additional Board of Ed presentations this evening, and I do think there are some changes to what the board has previously received. So, any questions? At this point, I'll call on Burke Leclerc for the Board of Ed. And thank you, Burke, for being here and presenting the Board of Ed capital plan.
Evening. In terms of our Board of Ed process, we began in November, and the Board of Education started with what we call the roll forward list, just simply bringing forward the items that had been on the six-year CIP last year. And there were some modifications to the order of them, and in some cases there were projects that were split out where a portion was brought forward and a portion was moved backwards. We updated the detail sheets, which you have in front of you this evening, and I think I put them in generally in an order of some of the larger, older building projects first, namely the main office, safety and security related work at both Henry James and at Squadron Line School. And there are several parts to Squadron Line, so I actually did 3 different sheets just to try to give a little bit of background on those, and I can try to walk you through those. But in terms of focusing, I assume you'd like to focus on the first year, the 14-15 requested year. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that will be helpful since the board has been working off the earlier spreadsheet. If you could take each line item and compare whether or not those line items have any changes from the previous presentation, that might be helpful. So the board knows what's changed from our last presentation.
I believe, I don't have your prior version in front of me, but I believe that essentially there is a change to the Squadron Line Main Office Security Project in terms of our cost estimate that was received this past week. And a little bit of the history that the Squadron Line Main Office Project has been on our 6-year CIP for approximately seven or 8 years. And that original estimate of $500,000 was not updated over a period of many years. And at the Board of Education's last meeting, there was conversation about the fact that since that was a security-related project, it was being shown in the second year, the FY 15-16 year, 1 year after the request for funding for the similar project for Henry James Main Office, that it felt like those two should be moved forward in a more equal basis. And we were advised at that time to get an updated estimate, which is what we were able to do, working with the town capital projects and engineering office and our supervisor of buildings and grounds. We did an updated walkthrough, and we were able to get a new cost estimate, and that total you'll see there is $1,050,000. But what's also different from your prior version is we've also shown our estimated amount of state reimbursement, because both the Henry James Main Office and the Squadron Line Main Office, our understanding is that those would also be eligible for state reimbursement. So basically the net cost, as we show on these documents, really netting out to what the town and board would be asking voters to pay, is actually not up, because the amount of reimbursement at close to 1/3 is now shown for both the the Henry James renovation project under the grant section at $257,378 and Squadron at $348,705.
Just Burke, we could go back to that. So the changes from the previous recommendation was the increase in the Squadron Line Main Office project, and
it was moving. I'm not sure which version. I think the version you had it in that current year.
version we have is that
14,
the amount requested was 500,000.
Right, which is,
Right.
as I explained, had been
So now-
that amount for about 7 or 8 years. and
Right,
had
so
not
now
been
the number
updated.
is 1,050,000.
Correct.
And what's the percent of reimbursement that you're indicating is?
Okay. It's approximately 33%.
33%?
Yeah.
And-
That's for Squadron Line?
For the squad line?
For all of the reimbursement projects in this schedule, Central School Roof, which was in 15, 16, and the larger Henry James project, we have that same percentage you'll see down there.
So the change from last item was you did not budget the reimbursement?
Correct, on both the Squadron Line and the Henry James main office project portions.
And so.
So we're showing that amount deducted.
So in terms of the debt level that the board would incur, in terms of the amount that needs to be bonded, what's the debt, what does that do to the debt limit number, the 7%?
It's a slight decrease.
But just the question is, doesn't the whole project have to be bonded in order to get the reimbursement? You can back out the reimbursements?
That's how the worksheet has been done consistently.
Okay, all right. Questions?
Just
Yeah.
for clarification, the grant and other funding, it says Latimer Lane, you mean Squadron?
Or Central, do you mean Squadron?
No, it's both. Latimer Lane, if you look under grants and other
In
funding.
each year that you're right, that I failed to
Yeah, but
mention that
Squadron
in the last
And
the
Central.
17-18 year, there's also Latimer reimbursement in addition to the other projects that I mentioned.
Because the schedule we've got, Squadron isn't listed as a
Squadron
grant.
is not listed.
The handout that we just received, the changes, shows the Central School reimbursement, which is not up for this current fiscal year, the Henry James renovation reimbursement, and the Latimer Lane renovation reimbursement.
Right. So there should be a fourth line for reimbursement?
The Latimer Lane column is showing two different projects, so the dollar amount of $348,705 should really be a fourth line indicating Squadron Line
Okay.
for that.
Oh, so the Latimer Lane reimbursement is 2018? It's not?
Right. That's
There
the
you
2
go,
point.
there's the Latimer Lane
2018.
renovation for this fiscal year. Oh, for that fiscal year out.
Latimer Lane is our
Is in 18?
is our out year.
Yeah.
So really, there should be a fourth.
Before lines.
A fourth
fourth line.
line.
So you consolidate it, so we
that
just
line
need to
is
write
against
Squadron
Squadron.
next to that line, and
That's the
it trues up.
348,705 is the squadron grant?
Correct. Correct.
I knew what you meant.
So what is the Latimer Lane reimbursement?
It's that one. So this needs
The
to be the total line
2.258.
below it.
2,280,280,
25820?
It should always match up to the project, which is above.
6.8 million.
Okay.
Okay, so we have to make that correction.
So there's an asterisk against this project because it's doubled? I mean, it's been on the, I just know that there's.
I think that's just a typo because
Okay,
it
'cause-
was actually moved forward.
Yeah.
It's been on for, like I said,
And I
about
was gonna
7 or 8
say,
years.
yeah, we don't typically see an asterisk added if the amount
Was it on for
changes.
this year?
No.
We moved the year forward,
That's why
but
it's here.
it's
That's why there's an
Okay.
asterisk. It was on, but it wasn't on for this current fiscal year. It was changed.
okay.
So for the alternatives that you list for the Henry James project?
If we could have, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I apologize. I want to make sure the clerk can hear, so I want to make sure that
sorry.
No, it's
the
right here.
audience is quiet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Under the Henry James project, you list the total at $8,985,000, but then you have the two alternatives. Are those included in the 8 million? Or are those?
The way we broke this out was that last year, there was a total project of $9,760,000 for one Henry James project. And alternate A is bringing forward, as our Board of Ed asked, and carving out a first phase that would include just moving the main office. So that actually came, that was an updated cost estimate that we had done this fall by the same architect that had done the larger cost estimate in the previous year. So we simply took the total amount, subtracted the new estimate of $775,000 for breaking out the main office. So those two, when you would add them up, are essentially that former project. The second part of of that alternate B is essentially spelling out some maintenance and improvement to the first floor, which is immediately in the same area as the main office work. So you would have the carpeting, lockers, lighting and ceiling that would all be proposed to happen. That is not eligible for state reimbursement because it's considered maintenance. So I broke it out for that reason, so there's no reimbursement shown against that. It would make a lot of sense to do the two at the same time,
Right.
even though they don't have to be the same project.
So maybe it would make
Sort
sense.
of a short-term phase and then a longer-term.
It just looks like, well, because in the parentheses, you list the office.
Well, I think it might be helpful, Cheryl, for the board, if we could just go through each of these,
Right.
start at the top, and go through each of the items, the request and the amount, and then the reimbursement discussion. I think that might be
That's
helpful. And
these
then
sheets.
We can, correct. So what we'll do is, we'll follow, I think what we'll do is we'll start with the Board of Ed presentation, and the first item is the district network infrastructure, which is a request for $150,000. If you could explain that. I think that's the.
Towards the very back of the new packet that we just got.
So they're not in order.
I think it's
I think it's towards the middle.
fifth page.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah, it's after the Henry James pictures and projects.
I think we just
I
go
believe
through
it's right
each
after
item.
Squadron. I kind of grouped the two main office ones.
Well, I'm just going
Front?
in the,
Okay.
going from the main
Okay.
list.
And
I
I
just
was
think
just-
it's easier,
Right,
because
and
then
I'm just
everybody can follow.
I'm trying to follow your order, but to
Yeah.
tell her which page.
Well, then we won't be bouncing around. We'll just go through each item. That's all right? So the first item is the district network infrastructure, and the request is for $150,000.
Right.
Walk us
So,
through.
so last year, there was a $350,000 request in 15-16 and a $450 in the 16-17. We took that $350,000, moved $150,000 forward. The reason for that is that the priority project, according to our IT department, is to increase the amount of storage. It is a large backup system that would be both at the high school and Henry James. And essentially what we've been working with a company called Walker Systems to look at all of our needs kind of on a going forward basis for their infrastructure. And this was the highest priority, and that project would be something we need to get done over the summer, because that's the time when you can do the most work on our network when school's not in session. And so that would actually be a 13.5 terabyte backup system, and is the most important need that we have currently. So we'd like to try to get that done this summer, and then there would be further infrastructure work done in the following year.
And this is part of the second slug of the network infrastructure that you guys already did, right? 'Cause didn't you originally have 1.6 million and then we broke
We
it
had
two $800,000 chunks?
1.8 million for a district network infrastructure project for the virtualization.
Okay.
And we were asked how that spending would actually work, and we said it would be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3,
Okay.
essentially.
All right.
So this is a separate project from that,
It is, okay.
separate and
Additional
distinct, yeah.
Other questions? Okay. We'll move to the next item, which is the Henry James renovation science classrooms. That project?
So,
That's not, that's in
That's for
year
17.
17.
right, so that was pushed out
Okay.
2 years, and that was in part to make sure that it fit under that 7% guideline illustration, and
Funding for this year is alternate A and B?
correct.
Okay,
But
wanna walk
you
us
don't
through those?
have alternate A in a year, so, but you mean it for to be in 2015?
Yes, that should have been copied over to both of that, thank
Right.
you.
Bert, can I just be a pain in the neck for a second? Sorry. I mean, we doubled the high school for 35 million, and it's really gonna cost us $9 million to update a couple of classrooms? I mean, it just seems so out of whack.
Well, it's really a project that would involve creating a new footprint area for the library media center.
Okay.
And it would involve renovation of science classrooms, approximately 8 of them, and it would include the remaining 50% of the sprinkler system, because the fire protection system is only roughly in half of the building.
Okay.
And so it's really a building-wide renovation that would touch, various aspects of our existing building. So we've
How
really
does it
carved
dov-
out the main office portion as something that could be done separately.
And how does it dovetail with declining enrollment? Because I know one of the things that you're looking at is the utilization of all the facilities as a result of decline, so.
Right. The meeting I was at earlier this evening upstairs, that's, one of the topics there. So one of the thought processes was that, this would, the main office is something that needs to exist regardless. The basic condition of the first floor is something that's needs to be maintained. So moving it out several years gives that task force a chance to look and see if there's any changes possibly to that scope of that renovation.
And I don't mean to suggest that we spend more money, but, I mean, we've done Henry James, I think, 4 or 5 times in my lifetime. Is there any economies of scale to, what else do we need? And lumping it in, because it only gets more expensive the longer we wait.
Right. Well, I think that might be something that the task force might look at holistically. At this time, I don't know what else we would be suggesting. This is the only scope that I've been working with.
I mean, you know better than I do, but once you open up the building, that's when the costs go up, right? Because you got to do it all, and you got to make it up to code. And every time we open the building, we got to keep doing that, right? So,
yeah. The biggest code issue right now is once we do significant work within there, then that would trigger the need to finish the sprinkler.
You can refresh my memory on Henry James. I've been out of there for a year, but when you move the office to the front, next to the front door, I assume it's going to be on the left as you go in.
Exactly.
In the front door. Well, those are science classrooms now. So you're going to do what with them? So you're going to have to build new science classrooms to replace those, or you're going to let them go?
The classroom space would be essentially swapped with where the main office is now. There'd be classroom
I understand that,
restored
but you're
there.
going to have to build science classrooms to.
I don't believe the area in question is a science classroom.
Well,
there are a couple more down.
So we probably need some clarification as to whether
What room is
what it's
that?
replacing, if that would be helpful to
It's
get
the one before the science classroom? Okay, because I was thinking it was the.
Used to be math, decades ago.
So are you moving the media center down to where the main office was, or is that now off the table? At one point, there was a discussion of doing.
The scope for the 17-18
You're going to run my
year, if I'm looking at the right year here, and FY 16-17. That larger scope is where the media center would be part of that renovation, and I believe that the current scheme would be to move it out behind where the current office is now, expand the footprint. We had looked at a version last time that would have added it to the second floor. Our current thinking is that it would probably be a better fit to just expand the footprint on the first floor.
But to Sean's point, does it make sense to do that while you're switching the office to the front? Or economy of scale, or no?
I don't think so. I mean, you can always argue that you should do the whole project and not phase it. The reality was that the board is recommending, making a safety improvement that can be broken out. I mean, if you were doing all the work at the same time and not waiting, yes, it would cost somewhat less, but as has been discussed earlier, perhaps that larger portion will get revisited, and that scope might change with some of that enrollment data.
So you're really recommending, you're buying some time, doing the improvements that are needed now, and then as the enrollment discussions continue, you can take a look at how you're going to adapt the junior high to accommodate some of those projected changes too. Okay. Other questions? How about B, the interior hallway that makes up the second portion of the funding request?
So that would be the first floor replacement of the existing flooring. There's a little bit of abatement work that would have to be done as a part of removing the carpet. And then the lockers would be replaced because those are all adjacent to each other. If you recall the lockers there, they're extremely narrow, extremely old, not the best functioning. But that would be the time to do that, as well as the goal is to have lighting and ceiling replacements done. So we're just really, address all of those needs
It'd just
at
be
the
on
same
the
time.
first floor?
Right on the just on the first floor.
So you really need to do this at the same time that you're moving the office, because, well, you're
think
going
you
to
could
trash
argue
the
that
carpeting and the
that
ceilings
would
while
be
you're moving
the-
the office, so.
That would be the best way to do it.
It's all the same area.
And you're confident that none of these improvements will be impacted with future changes?
I can't say that when you put in the sprinkler system, you wouldn't be working in a similar area.
No, I mean with the larger phase down the road. I mean,
That's what I'm talking about, to your point. I mean, you can't, again, if you don't, the preference that we originally brought forward was to do a project and do it all at the same time. That's always going to be the most efficient way. But given the realities of our capital schedule and moving this out, the Board of Education's recommendation was to prioritize safety, move forward with some of those maintenance areas that are adjacent to each other in that
well,
first
I
floor.
would be open to just making sure that any additional, that if there's any additional work that would need to be done now, so that we wouldn't be duplicating or undoing work, I think that I would be interested in hearing. So if you,
The problem is that like I said, the most obvious thing that I could think of would be expanding the sprinklers. That's about another $1 million based on the prior cost estimate, and that would impact the entire, the entire area, 50%. So
so just so I understand, so the building right now is not sprinklered 100%.
correct, approximately 50%.
Right. So if you were to add, I mean, I think it would be helpful to have the cost if you were, I'm assuming that if you sprinkled the whole building, you wouldn't be changing the building going forward, but you haven't made that decision? I guess what I'm asking is, what would it cost to sprinkle the building 100%? What would it do to these costs? And given the fact that you wouldn't have to go back and impact what you've already done in the larger phase? And you don't have to answer it right now, but it might be helpful to have that information
Those
as
are
we
the
go
types of
forward.
things that we're trying to do the best we can to not do anything that would have to be undone quickly.
And I'm not looking for an answer tonight. I just, as we discuss this, we're going to come back to it. It might be helpful to know what that number is and what impact that would have, and if you choose.
Original cost estimate shows what it would be if we did it.
Okay.
It just gets a little harder to say, well, what would that number change by if we started with the main office?
Okay. As we go forward,
We can
that
work-
would be something
we
I
can work
would
on
be
it.
interested in hearing.
Talk to the architect and see if he can help us.
Yeah.
kind of decipher what
Sure.
it's possible to do.
Thank you. Other questions on Henry James, that project? Okay.
Okay, that's all right.
Going on?
That's okay.
Okay, we'll move to the next item for this year's funding, and that's the Simsbury High School turf field synthetic track maintenance. You could explain.
Sure. So last year, we put this on the schedule as simply a $750,000 number estimated to replace the turf, because it would be approximately 10 years old, which is what we were given as a expected lifespan. And in bringing out a consultant to look at the current condition, they actually felt that what made sense to do was replace just the track surface now, because the areas that are worn, you can simply resurface it. You don't have to do additional layers, and which would be more costly to repair. And then also they said that we could do some repairs to the existing turf. So those two things together are the $250,000 that they're recommending be done this summer. And then it buys us more time. We push out the actual replacement of that turf several more years, and that's the $500,000 that you see.
So, again, just so we're not doubling back and duplicating. if we were to replace the turf this year, we wouldn't need to do the maintenance. So would you save any money?
Again, it was the recommendation of the consultant that we worked with, who does these projects to move forward in this fashion, and that there was more useful life that we could gain out of that turf field.
But it's just the addition of it, so because it's not broken down for us, so 250,000 that we would use for maintenance, how is that broken down?
It was roughly 150 for the track resurfacing and about 100 in miscellaneous turf.
So I guess my point is, if we didn't do that and did the 500,000 just to replace it, we would save $150 because we wouldn't need to do that. Is that not accurate, or can you?
You would potentially be able to do that, and then you just start that next clock ticking in terms of when you have to do it again, because they're just.
And to Mary's point, I mean, interest rates are going up. So there might be even more than 150 if we wait. So that's just something to think about in terms of, I know we've got a debt limit that we have
Replacement
to deal with.
really wouldn't be able to happen this summer. Even if that was the.
Why is that?
Just from the timing, I think it's something that Jeff and I have talked about. It's one thing to do lesser repair work, but I think a full-blown replacement would be a challenge for this summer.
Well, again, it's your project, but it certainly would be supportive of doing the bare improvements for this year and moving up the replacement a year earlier so that you can save some money while interest rates are low. But that's certainly the Board of Ed's call. But if it has to be done, it has to be done. And I don't see what the point in waiting is.
And basically, he's just saying that it doesn't have to be done yet. I mean, that's the cost benefit. I see your point that you might save money over that longer term.
Any other questions on the turf project? Okay, we'll move to the tennis court replacements for next year, so we'll skip that one. The next item for this year is the Squadron Line main office project, and that was the one that increased, so maybe we can walk through that. What the change was again?
The change was that we had the architect who had done the original concept back, I believe, in 2008, come back out, look at the current situation, and try to come up with the most improvement without impacting the footprint, and the least, the most efficient way of increasing security, essentially keeping the main office in the same general area, but swapping the nurse's office to the back, moving the main office to the front, so when you would come in, similar to the Henry James concept, that you would be able to control access. People would have to come through the office, and that could be limited once school is in session.
And you're confident that this number is the right one?
I'm confident that this number is a conservative estimate, and that's something that, again, working with Jeff and Steve Twitchell, we want to ask further questions about, if there's anything that could be reduced. But this is, the purpose was to have a realistic number from a professional.
Great. Questions, Lisa?
Yeah, at your Board of Ed meeting, this was not by town staff, and the superintendent was not actually recommended for this year. This is a vote by the Board of Ed. Could you talk a little bit about what concerns caused them to move that up?
Sure. I think it's just the feeling of board members that there was a lot of similarity between the logic and prioritization of moving the main office project at Henry James forward to the first year, so to feel that both projects are safety oriented, and to not try to say one school's more important than
This is a result of the safety audit you did in the new town and looking at safety issues. So this was really not just a reconstruction project. This was a safety concern that the board felt was important enough to move up. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. And it's also interesting that both of those projects have been around for a similar length of time, and it's not like these were new ideas. They were always suggestions and parts of those projects. They were improvements that we had seen for a period of time that would make sense, and it was just heightened with the Newtown situation.
I'm a
Other
little
questions?
surprised at the cost, only because I'm familiar with both buildings, and the Squadron Line one is really just reconfiguring an existing space, whereas the Henry James one, you're going to have to move, the whole office and redo classrooms, and yet the Squadron Line one is more expensive, and it doesn't make sense to me.
I understand that
That's,
reaction.
I
We've
mean-
worked with two different architects who both did previous work in those respective buildings.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the areas that we'd be looking at is the contingencies built into that in terms of, what are the assumptions used by each for, fixtures, what are the, we have pretty detailed numbers, and that's really what we want to just, be able to push back on and see if there's any conservatism built into the Squadron Line number that maybe we would possibly reduce. But,
Or the Henry James number isn't high enough, because that just doesn't make sense to me.
There's an incongruity there.
I
I understand the initial reaction. I didn't, do them for the.
I know, I know
architect,
you
so
didn't make
I
a
will-
plan.
I
I'm
will
just saying
certainly-
from a cost
working
point
with
and
Jeff,
what
who-
those
who was
buildings
not
look
involved
like.
with that first one, maybe one assistant eye looking at both of them, we can, to your point, see if there's a little bit of depth there that we feel isn't being done consistently in the assumptions between each.
I mean, Squadron, there are offices there. You're going to have to move some walls, but, and put a window so you can see out the front and reconfigure the door, probably.
The main issue that I can tell you that isn't apples to apples is there's handicap bathrooms and movement of plumbing in bathrooms within Squadron. That is not the case at Henry James.
For the nurse's office.
Correct. And it also serves the main office. So that is definitely one of the cost issues. There's also some issues with the front entranceway, where the roof currently comes to those set of glass doors. There's some work there that I think might be a little bit more involved.
Yeah, your two big costs, is the plumbing, cutting the floors, pretty big deal. And the present entry foyer is not code compliant. So we've got to push out the main bank of entry doors to bring up the proper wheelchair clearances and handicapped individual accessibility in that, we'll call it an airlock, but basically in the foyer. Those are two fairly big expenses involving curtain walls and plumbing. And
But don't you have
that's
to
your
move
main
the plumbing in
difference.
Henry James too, because you're going to need interior bathroom space in that office.
They're not, it's not part of the plan.
Yeah, they're not including that as a suite in Henry James.
They have it now.
Well, it's across the,
They're across the,
Well,
it's really
it's
private
where
to
the
the-
teachers
Yeah.
went.
But that is your difference. Henry James does not include internal bathrooms in that office suite, and it does not include that whole foyer entrance.
Staff going down the hall.
Other questions?
Yeah.
That completes the funding request for this year. I noticed the boathouse is no longer being requested.
Yes, and going back to the original communication that I had from Friends of Simsbury crew via Ian Carabella, who's our varsity coach, that they had always said and had indicated to our Board of Ed in the memo that they would attempt to raise funds, and they're still going to try to do that. I thought it was important because it wasn't a project it was on my radar to put it on this list, and obviously there are some unique aspects where that building was built through volunteer efforts and has been retained ownership, even though it's on our land, and yet we insure the equipment in it, and it's obviously used both by the Simsbury crew programs as well as by the general public in the summertime for rec programs. So it's something that we're going to try to assist them in any way we can, but ultimately they're trying to get their target of the scope of work, and I think that number may be coming down a little bit. And so at this point, we would recommend just not having it on for this upcoming year, and hopefully they can raise some funds.
Just a quick question on that. I thought they were still looking for a contribution, just not the entire cost of the roof, because the entire cost of the roof was 75, right? I thought they were still looking for
The initial range that had been stated, and I didn't have, I didn't have something in writing, was actually 55 to 75, because the person that I am, I put the highest amount in. I just
Yeah,
wanted
no, I
to be
understand.
conservative
Yeah.
and put it out there, and again, not to assume, it's just kind of hard to say, well, they're going to raise X, so we only need to, consider Y. So I just put the total amount of the project for conversation. One of the Board of Education's first questions was, well, what about the condition of the rest of the building? Is there some concern about putting a new roof on, but there's other work? And I believe today, Town and Board of Education staff was able to actually get in and start to do that review, and I don't think there were any major issues. So that's kind of the first step, and that was something that the Friends were very open to that support. So we're going to continue to work with them in that fashion, and think of it as just how do we maintain this asset that is a town asset.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, you got 140 crew kids in there,
We do need to clarify, we can't issue bonds on projects that are not town-owned. So there is a technical problem with this project, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to
Can't
spend
be-
$750,000 on the football team and nothing on the crew team. I mean, that
Oh,
doesn't sit well with me.
No,
but-
that's not to say we are not, just for the record, the clarification.
Former
is-
rower, so.
The building needs clarification.
We own everything
Bond council
inside.
won't let us bond,
Yeah.
and just so you understand.
Yeah.
Bond council won't let you bond a building.
No, I understand.
Okay.
But
So
we
just
own
wanna-
everything inside, so we do have an obligation to protect it somehow, so.
We just need to clarify the ownership and the relationship, and I think it's important to have those conversations. If it's important to the town, and it is, and then we need to have some clarification. So that's great that you're continuing to work on the
And also,
project.
long-term, what we want to do with the
Yeah.
boathouse is what they have sufficient enough, given the flooding, and, Glastonbury's doing, although they have a much bigger river than we do, but,
We don't want to go down that boondoggle what Glastonbury's doing, trust
so we
me.
don't want to go down the boondoggle,
We
but
don't
there
want
may be,
that.
they may want to improve some of the things that they have there. And do they have the capacity
River's
to
not
meet
big
their
enough.
needs over time?
I think it's important to continue those discussions and, okay. Any questions on any of the outer years requests? Any questions on those? Okay. Any questions?
Just an overall and for clarification, so we're net with the grant funding, we're down $131,029 for the Board of Ed's request for 15. And again, as far as bonding goes, though, don't we have to assume the 2.5? No, so we bond and plan for the.
Because you guys don't use short-term borrowing instruments, I reckon you guys traditionally only use bonds. You can't bond for amounts that you expect to receive reimbursements on.
Okay.
Because I don't have a mechanism to pay it back.
Yeah, okay.
Like bonds are not necessarily callable once the reimbursement comes in. Should
So
you
the
guys
seven-
use short-term borrowing, then we could talk about borrowing for the full amount, but honestly, your liquidity needs aren't there.
So for our purposes, for the 7%, we're looking at the 1.9.
I have a question for Sean and Joe. This keeps us within our 7% bonding with the town projects, okay.
Any other questions on the Board of Ed projects? Okay, thank you, Burke.
All right.
We will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks, Burke.
Thanks for.
The party continues.
We'll go back now to the town projects. There's no other changes, no changes since our last discussions. Just to recap, the town's requests include the Ethel Walker Partial C, the multi-use trail connections and master plan updates, Simsbury Farms Golf Course improvements, the bridge improvements, highway management, technology infrastructure, and the alternative energy projects in the water pollution control line item, sewer main extensions, the inline grinder and screen replacement, and the Hot Meadow Center area sewer repairs. Any questions on any of the town projects?
Oh, hold on. I don't see the Hot Meadow
Yeah, is the Hot
area
Meadow
sewer
Center
in
one
here. Is-
on this year? I don't
No,
have that as
the
a.
sewer ones, I was off a line. The
Oh,
long
okay.
view control upgrades, the sewer main extensions, and the inline grinder and screen replacement.
You guys are picky tonight. Jeez,
Well,
cut her some slack.
We all need little
I
rulers.
get nervous when I
to
can't find
follow
numbers.
Even with glasses. Any questions on any of the town projects?
Not to be a pain, Jerry, but can you talk me through why we're gonna spend another 125 this year on the golf course? I mean, we just did sand traps. We've got 125, we got 90, we got 100. I mean, we got money coming in all over the place with the golf course, and we're about to do a subcommittee to try to figure out how that's all gonna fit in long-term. I mean, should we be doing that now? Should we be waiting? I mean, you know, overall, I just, not to pick on you, but.
Not to pick on you, but Jerry.
Picking on you.
Jerry.
I'm picking on you. Sorry.
Just remind us again. Sitting back there. What is the 125 for this year?
There's actually two pieces of that. And one of them has a pretty significant, I would say, a significant revenue piece to it, and that involves actually the redesign, reconstruction of 3, possibly 4 greens. And what has happened is, from the time 40 years ago when that course was built, obviously the speed of greens has changed, and a lot of those, and it's fairly common in a lot of courses now, is that the green speed has changed. It's making them harder to play. It's taking people longer to play through those greens. It's slowing up play, and it's reducing our revenue. What this will do is we'll go out, and the cost is roughly, we priced it out at about $25,000 to $30,000, per green, and that's design, construction, beginning to end. And basically what it'll do, it will make it, for one thing, it'll make it, from an operations standpoint, a maintenance standpoint, allow our staff to utilize the entire green. There are some greens now where there's very few spots you can actually put a pin, because there's so many places that the ball can't even stop. So you get situations where people putting, the ball's going, on the green, off the green, they're putting, and you've got people backing up, you've got play slowed down. So this is, something from an operations and a revenue standpoint has a real benefit. The other one actually involves some also some construction on the first and 10th green, or first and 10th fairways. From the tee area. If you're familiar with it, when it was built, you've got blind tee shots going off of 1 and 10. And for a number of reasons, it's not a good thing. Again, probably from a safety aspect, from an operations standpoint, in terms of visibility of the starter area, being able to see, who's out there, and buffering our first fairway from the range. Again, from an operations standpoint, some safety, aspect as well. But I would say these are projects, or we're going to look at, I think I submitted a 5-year capital project for the golf course that spaced out some improvements over time. I guess the alternative would be, if you funded the entire, thing at once and took it on over 5 years. I think this was more of a, really trying to do it in phases, make it, again, all this work would be done primarily in-house, so we've been able to, keep the costs down. The green construction itself would involve our staff working with an outside contractor, because there is some expertise that's really required on that. But that's, I hope, that's it in somewhat of a nutshell.
So that's why I'm a lousy golfer? Greens are too
It's not gonna help
good
you.
comment. There's nothing that can help my game. I spend too much time in meetings, that's my problem.
I just want to thank you, Jerry, we have the staff that has the capacity to do it in-house. I don't know, you never know how long you're going to have that. And so I think the costs that were reflective in the capital plan is significantly less than if we had to contract out the entire project.
It has. No, you're absolutely right, Mary. We've gotten, even on this work that's been done, to 95% completion now, about the best bang for the buck that we could, thanks to, the expertise that we have in-house. So we were very fortunate, and I think that will continue with some of the other projects that we have in front of us.
I'll just point out, one of the things that people said at the task force is how important the gems of Simsbury are to economic development, because of what attracts people, businesses to come here, and this is part of that whole thing. I know our real estate agents do take people down there to see this when they show houses, so it is part of an integrated whole. And, I think it is important to invest in our gyms.
Other questions? Sean?
Just to switch to the trails, so, and again, it's been a while since we talked about this. The 212 in this year is getting us what?
Which line item are you looking at?
So
Just
the
above
multi-use
the-
trail connections? Because we've got 212 there, and then we got 1.3 million later on. So what are we getting for 212,000 bucks?
Sean, basically, the 212 covers primarily some design and some construction work. We actually broke some of these projects down just for ourselves, to kind of figure out how it's all going to work. But generally, it includes design for the Terrifield connection piece, the construction of the Baker Loop, and the updating of the Terrifield and the Simsbury Meadows master plans.
Those were both recommended by the Economic Development Commission. The loop has been on the center master plan, I think, for 10 years. And we've tried to get some grant funding for that project, and so far hasn't received grant funding. So that project would be completed. And then the recommendation, again, to complete the master plan, revisit the master plan that was done previously for the Ironhurst Boulevard Baker property land, and then to also take a look at Terrifield Park. In next year's capital budget, Jerry had some improvements recommended in that budget. But what we wanted to do is take a moment and look at how we're utilizing Terrifield Park, whether it made sense to use it in a different way instead of coming forward with the budget line item next year for replacement of picnic tables and fire pits. Are people using those, or would they rather see boat launches? So I think it's a really good proactive way to look at that park before we come in and recommend any funding for next year's budget. It's not a lot of money, it'll give us a chance to have some dialogue with the residents of Terrifield and with the Economic Development Commission about how we're utilizing that park.
That was also part of the marketing study, so that recommendation of the Terrifield as a destination, and as we talk about the Whitewater, it's an exciting area to, and this just, and Lisa, you can chime in because this is part of the discussion of the EDC, so there was some confusion around the monies that are needed to do this study and what plans are already there. So was there any relook at the total dollars needed for this? And you guys are pretty sure that this is all what's needed?
In fact, there was a lot of discussion because we went back and Rich has the history of it, but we had a lot of staff meetings with Rich and Jeff and Jerry and myself to talk about, we have done a lot of work down in the center already.
Yeah.
Their plans, it was heavily detailed, so it really is just a question of going back and making sure that we relook those plans and bringing those up to date, so it's not as costly as starting from scratch.
We had a very expensive master plan done down there. So it's mainly a matter of revisiting it, perhaps shifting around some items, and so for a fairly modest amount of money, we can update that plan. So essentially, we're carrying about $20,000 for construction to implement the trail loop as identified in the plan, and about $5,000 to upgrade that plan.
Is that an Ironhorse?
Yes. The other construction cost we're carrying is $25,000 to make improvements on what's known as the Farmington River Trail, and that's the multi-purpose trail that runs from Town Forest Road to West Mountain Road.
So the 25 for EDC, then 5 would go towards the study, and the remainder would be able to actually be used for
construction. That's correct.
Yeah.
And then there's always, a lot of these numbers, if you added up all the numbers we just said, there's another number that goes into all of these, which is your bond cost component. We always carry that in our projects.
Thank you.
Other questions on the capital items? I know we spent a lot of time at previous workshops, so I know the public may not be getting the full benefit of our conversations, but there's been no changes from our last previous discussions. Okay. If not, is the board ready to take action on a capital plan?
Can we just revisit the information that you guys provided too on sort of bonding everything out and the scenario A, scenario B? If we're looking at this year one right now, what are we looking at as far as the debt capacity and stuff goes?
That was the information we presented to the Board of Finance previously.
We have it
Yeah, we have.
Prior to, but that doesn't incorporate the Board of Ed changes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't, but the bottom line is the same.
That's the question.
So it shouldn't,
Okay.
it shouldn't affect any of the recommendations that we went forward in detail.
Okay.
So so like
still
you
be
you already asked it, we forward this tonight, it complies with the
For
town's
this year, we're still under the
current
cap.
policy and.
Yeah, the presentation I walked through, I think that first meeting
Yep.
was assuming at the time $6,335,000 in FY '15 needed. And right now with the current changes in the Board of Ed changes, that's $6,203,917, so it's a little $100,000 less, but obviously that is in keeping with the 7% guideline. If they're able to make the 6.3 fit, 6.2 would go up.
We start having challenges with scenario A and B as we get into the out years.
Yes, that's right.
But the items presented for next fiscal year comply with our guidelines.
Right.
Other questions? The board ready to vote for the capital plan?
I'll make a motion that we vote to approve the capital plan as presented tonight. Are we ready? Do I have a special motion I need to make?
Well, there's two motions,
All right.
I believe, and
Where are those motions?
but I believe we need a motion
We
to
have
add
those
those items
somewhere.
that are not on prior year.
Yes.
Before you vote-
Oh, right.
vote on the act.
That's right.
Okay, we should do those separately.
We will need, just for everyone's recollection, we will need exact bond language to send this
Right.
forward. So we're not taking final action tonight, we're just
Okay.
forwarding this for the Board of Finance. So the motion doesn't have to be as technically detailed as it will have to be when we ultimately come back, after having gone through the Board of Finance and the public hearings, it will come back to us for a final resolution, which will be very detailed.
Yes.
Yeah, because the first motion is we're just signaling our, assume our majority desire to put it on the plan, and then the second motion is to then fund it.
Correct.
And then obviously, as you suggest, to do the bond language later.
So the first motion will be to add the Board of Ed items to the capital plan. And then that motion passes, then we will move to adopt the capital plan forward to the Board of Finance.
Do we also need to make a motion? We have to approve, well, I guess if we make that motion, we've approved these start items. Do we need to make a separate motion? Because
No.
that has to be by 4.
No. Unless anyone has a specific item they would like separately voted,
Okay.
we can vote on it. as
Okay,
a
as a
capital
whole.
plan. Yeah.
So alternative A and B are going to both be included in
Correct.
that. So I just want to make sure we have everything.
Everything that the Board of Ed presented tonight, in addition to all of these town projects that we've previously discussed that appear
Okay.
on the 2015 capital plan. Thank you. Forward.
So the asterisks on here match the asterisks on the full 6-year CIP
Yes.
plan. That's why they're there.
That's why.
That's why they're there. Okay.
The Charter Section 803B is the one that refers to.
Yes.
4 votes to on to the capital plan.
Okay.
In the prior year.
So.
So we would move to approve adding the items, the Board of Ed item changes and the items that were not in the previous capital plan onto the capital plan.
Yep.
That would be the first one.
That was my question. Okay. So I, Lisa Hebner, make a motion to add the following new projects to the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2014-15 in accordance with Charter Section 803B. Do you need me to read them all as listed in the paper? Do
Yeah.
you want me to read them?
No, I don't think you need to read
As
it.
reflected in our motion packet. Incorporated by reference.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
Any discussion on any of those items? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item would be to approve the capital improvement plan and forward it to the Board of Finance.
I, Nancy Hasse, make a motion to approve the capital improvement plan to include the following projects as listed below for fiscal year 2014-15.
And that's incorporated by reference. to
Incorporated
the
by
project.
reference.
Incorporated by reference to the projects.
Thank you.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now that you've approved the capital plan, projects, why don't we take a chance at referring the capital plan that we've just approved to the Planning Commission as required by Section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statute.
I move that we refer to the Planning Commission.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is discussion and action of fiscal year 2015 budget. Pleased to say that we have completed that item at our previous budget workshop. Thank you all for your cooperation and hard work. And those The Board of Selectmen budget will now go to the Board of Finance for discussion tomorrow night, March 25th, at a meeting of the Board of Finance. It will then go to public hearing on April 10th, which will be conducted by the Board of Finance. Next item is acceptance of a donation of $2,400 from an anonymous donation through the United Way, with our thanks to keep Simsbury Food Closet full. And as you may have read in the Hartford Current, Simsbury is not unusual and is among many towns experiencing tremendous need. And we're really grateful for all of our generous donations that we received, and grateful to our staff for making the need for assistance as confidential and as easy as possible. I have a motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept the donation of $2,400 from an anonymous donation through the United Way.
Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Askham seconded. I don't know if the clerk got that. Yep. Next item is to appoint the members of the Hometown Hero Selection Committee. This is a wonderful honor, and so if anyone knows of any hometown heroes, we'll be accepting nominations through the middle of April. The board must appoint a selection committee. The recommendations are myself, Selectman Payne, Roger Spear, Tom Horan, TJ Donahue, and Len Lanza. I have a motion to accept.
Second. Sean moved.
Do we have a second?
Cheryl.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is to appoint Ken Picard to the Hartford Area Cable Television Advisory Council.
Move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is to appoint Dick Ostap to the Hartford Area Cable Television Advisory Council.
Move that as well.
Second that as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is to approve the remaining members for appointment to the EDC Task Force.
Just quick question. I just want to check, Rich Correa
Correa, yeah, I
he'll
need
be
to-
a liaison?
yes,
We'll
yes.
take him out of the approval and just make him a liaison. 'cause-
Correct. He's not a resident. He was working on that. It didn't quite transpire the way he hoped yet. So,
He will not be a member, he'll just
he'll be a liaison.
Okay, I just wanted to.
He's off the list.
Right, off the list.
So, yes.
So I'll move that with the change for Rich Correa.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is just a reminder that the public is invited to attend a public information session to give comments about the Simsbury Police Department on Monday, March 31st. Next Monday at 4 p.m. right here in the main meeting room, and we'll be posting this information to the website. Next item is to revise the naming rights policy, and this was recommended by Mr. Payne. And I know a number of us trying to understand the changes, so maybe you could walk through those changes.
Here, if you pass that along, Lisa. What I did was I sent it to the clerk. Unfortunately, the color copy that I sent to her got copied in black and white. So it was a little tough to see the changes.
Thank you.
So I'm handing a copy. I didn't realize, I'll give you my copy as soon as we're done.
Thank you. Mike, you want to walk through the
Sure.
suggestions?
And then I have a suggestion at the end to hopefully simplify this. I started going through, and under page 1, A, naming rights defined, number 1, the first line, I added the word significant financial contribution. Without that word in there, my feeling was that I gave you $1. And I think it should be something more than that, open to defining how that's going to be. But I do think it should be some significant donation. It could also be a percentage of the cost if we chose to do that, but I'm trying to start somewhere and go from there. That was on page 1. If you go to page 2, under naming rights and recognition, the second line, I added the word resident, because nowhere did it say that someone has to be a resident. And my thinking is it should be the town acknowledging its residents. I had nothing on page 3. I had 2 changes on page 4.
I only had one.
I took out the word streets. In my opinion, we start moving streets around, it impacts the police department, the fire department, the residents on that street, the U.S. Post Office, and everything else. And I added paths and trails.
I have paths and Trails, oh, no, I see, okay.
I added it.
You added it.
After listening to the Public Works Director, he started talking about all the different things we have in town, and paths and trails were among them. I had nothing on page 5, nothing on page 6, and that was it. And I did not know what, if any, suggestions other folks had, but I figured we got to start somewhere.
Thank you very much. Question, I'm
One
sorry.
other suggestion I had that I was thinking about is possibly instead of all of us bringing our own suggestions, maybe I could prevail on the lady sitting to my right to sit down with me. Oh, there's lots of ladies sitting to my right, so that's a safe statement. Yeah. If Lisa would sit down with me to go through and go over the concerns and see how we can make this policy better. And I throw that out there.
Thank you, Mike.
I haven't talked to Lisa yet, so. Must be one of the other ladies if
I
you
think
say
I
no.
need cookies.
Okay, I'll give them up.
Any comments on changes?
Yeah.
Lisa?
I'm fine with significant, although I think we do that. I mean, this board has the discretion to determine the amount. And I don't think we'd vote for something giving $1, but I'm neutral on that. Resident has me just slightly concerned, because if you are dead and buried in another town, you would not be eligible. Also, it excludes like MLK if we wanted to name a street after that. So
Okay.
I've just, that would be
Good point.
my concern there. And then the streets, we have a ton of new streets coming into town. Are we not going to name them after?
Actually,
But developers have the right to name
from my
streets, so-
experience on planning, the streets are named by the developer, not by us. So they are free, within reason, to name them as they so choose. So new streets, they're free to do what they want.
But there are, I think, I was concerned about this one too. There are some new streets that don't have, for example, the street going into Simsbury Farms. There are streets that don't have really any significant address changes affected. There are, so I don't know if we don't want to allow streets to be named, then we just don't allow streets to be named. I don't know if you want to restrict it and put it in the policy that you can't name a street, because I think there are opportunities. What we did in the naming of the street, the one street that we named that came before us, we actually required that all of the tenants be notified. We asked the owner be notified, that we make sure that we didn't have any, we had a public hearing, we made sure that we didn't have any opposition to the people who were affected, because as you said, Mike, accurately, that involves some changes to stationery and postal address, and we required that the owner of the property was comfortable with that. So I'm all for adding paths and trails, that's fine. I don't know, personally, I'm okay saying no to a street if it causes too much stress, but in areas where,
Everyone agrees.
we're not doing a policy for today, we're doing a policy for tomorrow. So, to me, I'm not afraid of leaving streets in. It's just personal. I agree with Lisa on the resident. I think there are some, we might want to honor someone in memoriam, and this change wouldn't allow it, so that does concern me. Other comments?
I'd like to see us do something different with buildings, whether it be at the time of renovation or construction, but established buildings, in my opinion, ought to come off the list. I don't want somebody coming in here suggesting that we rename this building, and then we have to, be put in that position. But, at the time of renovation or the time of significant construction or new construction, that's the time to name a building. I'd be open to that. I think that might allay my concern of getting a lot of these requests versus
Again,
having to...
I think the policy's fine, but, the next Board of Selectmen can actually change the policy if they want to rename Belden School. So it's a guideline, it's not going to hold up if the next board wants to change the policy.
Well, why do we have the policy then? I mean, why do we have anything? I mean, any board can change anything we do, so...
I think we
that
voted for the
argument-
policy to give the public a guideline. So, you can change the policy, my point is You can always rename a building. That's why I think that this is a good guideline. You can have more or less requests, and you have to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. So, I mean, you could change the policy to anything you want. You cannot have a policy, but at least you have some guideline. What happened was, if you recall, that the football field was named after a staff person at the Board of Ed, and there was no notice to this board or the Board of Ed that that was happening. So this was in reaction to the public getting notice that we were considering a name change, and that was the whole purpose of the policy.
But as soon as we put the policy in place, then all of a sudden we have a bunch of requests to start changing names. So we didn't have a policy and nobody was asking us for it.
No, we just changed it without telling anybody.
I agree, but we didn't, but now, sometimes the danger of a policy is then we highlight it and then everybody wants something.
I don't know if we had more or less. I think you just didn't vote on it. It just happened. People just named things. I think the Rush Shaw, naming of Simsbury Farms for Rush Shaw was not voted on by the board. I think it was done by the Parks and Rec Commission. Do you recall, Jerry? Yeah. The Rush Shaw, the naming of the building and the complex was named Rush Shaw. None of us know why or how, and I would support it. I mean, I think it's great, but, so I don't know, whatever. Spent a lot of time on this, and the board can do what they want.
I like Mike's suggestion of maybe two people getting together and coming to us with it.
I don't know. I thought we were comfortable with it.
He's involved.
I think we're going to keep going round and round up here on this.
Well, I would just, if people have suggestions for change, they should forward them to Mike.
Okay.
And if they don't, they shouldn't. And when the board's ready, we'll bring it back.
Okay.
Fair?
Works for me.
Okay, great. Next item is Aquarian Environmental Champion Awards Program. Just wanted to let the public know that we did receive notice that Aquarian does have is sponsoring the Aquarian Environmental Champion Year Awards Program. This is open to adults, high school students, nonprofits, small businesses to win recognition for outstanding volunteer efforts to protect or restore Connecticut's natural resources. The deadline for nominations is May 7th. There is an environmental nonprofit gift of $2,500 that is given to the winners. A student is eligible for a $1,000 prize, and the awards come with a special celebration on June 7th at Beardsley Zoo. So we'll forward this information to the Board of Ed so they can notify their students. And if anyone knows of any nonprofits that might be interested, we just wanted to make the public aware of this award. Next is background information for Culture Parks and Rec fee schedules. I don't think there was anything in our packets.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry, is this yours? Not to put you on the spot, but come on up.
Still here.
Poor Jerry. You want a cookie? There you go.
At the last meeting, when the fees were passed, particularly for the golf course, I think it was a question in terms of what the impact would be on our overall revenue picture. And so, and as I told you, it had been in place. You didn't have it in front of you, but I did, go back and pretty much show you by category that you acted on what the impact will be. And you can see there are subtotals for resident greens fees, non-resident greens fees, season passes, as well as carts. And the total, again, this is based on our 5-year average, but the total's right just over $47,000 per year. Now, the one thing that we do need to consider with this too is that the golf course spans 2 fiscal years, so this would be on the golf season, not on the fiscal year. But it's a little bit more of a positive because again, in the spring, a year from now. And possibly sooner than that, you'll be acting on fees for 2015, which will further, hopefully enhance the 14-15 revenue. But the one thing you should be aware of is the budget, I believe, that was approved tonight, the special revenue fund, the golf projection, given these fee increases and given our 5-year average, will meet that projection, which I think is a good thing. It's better than where we were prior to. Again, there are some other things we've talked about. some initiatives with the golf course that may create other revenue streams, and that will actually, the commission is meeting this Thursday night. They'll begin discussions on those and some of the things that were submitted to you, and that as far as the revenue increases and the expense cuts for the revenue fund, they'll be talking about those starting Thursday. So I think there is some more upside on the golf course. I think this is a far more realistic projection for the 14-15 year than the year we're currently in. So I think it's a good, I think they were good increases. I think they're, when you saw the fee survey of other courses, I think it was, very, competitive within those other courses, which is a concern to us. So, I think overall they were good, responsible increases, and I think they will meet the projection that we're looking at for next year.
Thanks, Jerry. Questions?
Just on your rink board advertising, is that stuff that you guys actually solicit, or is it just that folks sort of know it's there and they...
Yeah, we do on the ice rink. Yeah, we've had it in place for a long time, and we have we've gotten some people that really like it, others that just I don't really that maybe they don't feel we get the traffic that other ice rinks do, but. We have done, and I think we'll probably try and be a little more, aggressive with it. I think it's a pretty good, gives you year-round exposure, and I think the cost is fair. And the people that have it, I think, and some of them are major tenants too that, that feel like they, whether they feel they're giving, they're giving back. But I think it's good exposure.
Yeah.
So.
Now you got a lot of panels, right? So you can fill them up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just going to the rink, Nancy, you spoke on it. If you look at it, this actually was the best year. We just completed our best year ever, and it did meet the revenue projection for the current year in the revenue fund. The projected revenue for the rink was $205,000. We did meet that. A couple things. We did have some fee increases in place this year. We restructured our, the lesson program, saw a real uptick in public skating, which, given the weather, was a bit of a surprise, but we'd had some, did some marketing initiatives, and people seemed to respond. We actually found ourselves getting a little more non-resident use of the rink. So I think that was encouraging. We're already talking with, some potential tenants, ice, folks that are going to rent ice next year. I think that'll get us to the number that we're looking at, 210,000, which is a number that's in the revenue fund that you approved. And I think it's given a full year, which we got this year, and we didn't have the issue with storms and power outages and things like that. I think we're, it's certainly very doable.
Great.
Jerry, do the concessions at the rink get included in these totals, or?
Actually, the concessions, and they're pretty minor. We have some machines and that we run ourselves, but there's actually a concession line item in the revenue fund. And I think one of the things that, and probably I'll get with Joe at some point, we talked about is splitting out the concessions to the various areas. There's the golf course restaurant, there's the pool concession, the rink concession, and they all go into one. Probably from an accounting standpoint, it would be better if they were split apart, give really a truer picture of each facility on their own. So I think that's I think it's easily doable, and it won't affect the bottom line any, but I think it is, probably better that we.
Well, give you an opportunity to track.
Absolutely.
Whether there's an increase and whether there's an opportunity to grow it, or whether it's really not an opportunity and you might want to decrease your services. So it'll give you it'll allow you to react better. So that's good.
Because you staff concessions at the pool, right?
We do. We run that ourselves, yeah. We probably, until about 10 years ago, we'd contracted it out. We took it back really primarily to see what was really being done there, and we've made it into a fairly profitable, for the 10-week season, we do okay with it. And now with the new building, it's we're able to kind of expand what we offer. People like it. There's a nicer seating area. It's right on the main level. Certainly accessible now that it was, which we didn't have before. So I think a lot better situation than we had, with the old building. Yeah.
For full disclosure, my daughter is one of the concessionaires at the pool.
They earn their keep in there.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. She talks about how she's pushed, to work hard and sell those extra pizza slices, so.
Well, as an ex-hockey mom, I think having more hot chocolate at the rink is a good idea.
Yeah, for this year, for the first time, we actually had our golf course concessionaire came down and serviced a couple of the major tournaments, and it went well for the first year. I think we've tried over the years to do it, and it just never really seemed to click. But he had expressed interest in it, and I know the hockey folks liked it. So we're going to try and build on that a little bit. We've had fits and starts with it in other years, but hopefully maybe we can get a little more consistent offering there.
And with our state championship girls hockey team this year, we should have more interest.
That was my visual aid for tonight. And not to harp on this, but just one more question on these advertising. How much is it to,
$500 for the year.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the actual ad costs us about $100 to have done, so.
Okay.
So it's, I think.
It's a fair price.
I think it's nice.
It's not a bad deal.
Visibility.
Yeah.
I think it would be a good idea to break out the concessions with each
Yeah, absolutely.
area, though, because that will help us with
Letting them get settled, and then we'll.
well, particularly like with the golf and, if we're going to look at overall costs, then we should know what that is.
Other questions? Everybody's good? Yeah, why don't we do that under other? I don't know.
You're the boss, you do whatever you want. I just didn't want to, I wanted to make sure I reminded you.
Thank you. Just while we're talking about, why don't we do the minutes, and then under liaison I can report out. How's that? All right, next item is, thanks, Jerry. Next item is workshop special meeting, March 1st. Motion to approve.
Move that.
Second.
Hold on,
Any corrections, changes?
I think I had one. Yes, I have one on page 2. Wait, we're on March 1?
Yes.
Under public safety, in the last year, they experienced with a D twice as many.
Yes, thank you. Any other corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is budget workshop for March 7th. May I have a motion?
Move that.
Second?
Second.
Any corrections or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is March 10th, budget workshop special meeting.
Move that.
Any second? Any corrections, changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is special meeting, March 10th. Call your attention to the corrections in red. We needed the minutes to include that the resolution for the renovations to the Virginia Connolly Owen Murphy Apartments under the 2014 Small Cities Program application were actually read into the record.
Right.
And the entire resolution, because it was read into the record, does also need to be reflected in the record. So I'd ask the board to include that change. The other change in red is the insertion of the amount of the total tax refunds. On the next page, under the sidewalk policy, we reflected the action that the board, consensus that the board reached. Same thing under G, the consensus that the board reached. Under the public gathering permits, that item just lists the permits. Under the extension of the ground lease, that just lists the ground leases, so it's more accurate. And under the appointments for community care, we just listed the actual names of the members. So I'd ask that the board move the special meeting minutes with the additions.
I'll move that with the additions.
I'll second that.
Any other corrections or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Under liaison reports, any reports?
Really just wanted to have this visual aid shown, and as Sherry mentioned, the Simsbury Girls Hockey Team wins conference again, so I just want to congratulate them, and I'm not a hockey mom, never been a hockey mom. I understand it's early mornings, and so congratulations to them.
Thank you. One other item under recommendations, the board did receive a request for funding for the Martin Luther King Memorial. It'll be on a future board selecting meeting. I just wanted to report that because during our budget. It isn't, it is not manual operating expense, so it was not included in the budget recommendations, but I will put it on the next agenda for the board to consider. We also have to wait after January to make transfers, and so we'll try to identify whether there's funding available in this year's budget to make those transfers. So we'll have to wait till as we get closer to the fiscal year, but I will put it on the next item, next agenda for discussion.
Mary, could you just clarify the meetings for tomorrow night? I know we mentioned, somebody was talking about Meadowwood.
The
so there
Planning
was a meeting
Commission
tomorrow-
will
yeah.
have a-
Is that here or is that at the library?
I don't have that location.
And I know the Board of Finance is meeting also,
The Board of
but,
Finance is meeting here.
Yeah.
So I do believe it's in the library, but
all right, well, just because I think.
To double check on the website.
Yeah, just because I know people were interested in
Yes.
attending, and I wanted to make sure we sent them to the right place.
Yeah, so it is on our town website, and I can check, validate the location, but the Board of Finance is in here tomorrow night, so.
At 7 or 6?
6.
6.
Just another item that the board, I'd like to put forward, that we did do an RFP for both town council and for Labor and Employment Council, and we've gotten responses to those, so I'll be reviewing those and getting you guys information on that shortly.
Okay, there being no business remaining, I just need a motion to adjourn.
Move that.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
I'm not sure who won that one.
Everybody rushes for that one. Consensus on that one.
The most popular vote of the evening is. I know, yeah.